Hey guys, I'm going to attempt to do a January wrap-up because I filmed one ages ago. Well, I didn't technically film it. Okay, so I don't know how many of you watched any of my older videos, but I originally started with like a doll avatar thinking that it'd be like fun and unique, and then the stop motion just took too long to edit and do. So now I'm just doing in-person videos, and so I have like a pre-recorded January wrap up, but it's just my voice, and then I was gonna edit it with the doll, and it got to the point where I just dreaded ever working on it and everything. So it was never gonna get finished. So hence why we're doing the in-person videos now. And so I'm going to attempt to go back and wrap up each of my months up until the current month, which we're in May right now, as of the filming of this video. So wish me luck. I don't know how well I will remember everything. I did jot down little notes on my little raccoon notepad so that I could kind of remember the order from like worst to best. Ow! Just hit myself on my thermos. My January reads from worst to best. I only actually have two physical copies of two of the books. I have three of the books, but I can't find one of them. It should be, I have my books like organized and everything by like genre and then by author and stuff, and for some reason the one that I'm looking for is not where it should be. So I don't know where I set it, but I set it somewhere. Who knows? I'll find it, but I couldn't find it in time for me to film this video. So the worst book that I read in January is kind of tied between a fiction and a nonfiction. So it was really hard for me to decide on one. And I think when I originally made the video, it might be different than what I'm about to say now, but my hatred for this book is strong enough now that I'm like, no, this was definitely the worst one that I read. And then the other one, I don't remember enough of it, so I'm like, well, it must not have been as bad if I don't like have a seething hatred for it. It was just more boring than the other one. So the worst book I read in January was Wilder Girls by Rory Power. It's a young adult, which not to badmouth young adult, because one of my top ratings is young adult book on here, so I'm not bad mouthing it, but I've noticed my entire reading life, like even when I was the right age group for young adult, I never really clicked with it, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that necessarily had a lot to do with this, because this story is like, I hated the characters so much. I don't remember any of their names at this point, but I remember there's like one character that's like kind of the main storyteller, and then there's like her friend that tells part of the story, and then there's like the love interest sort of, and they kind of tell, there's one chapter at the very end from her perspective, but other than that, she's not given a POV for whatever reason until the weird last, well, it's like a bonus chapter that I have in my book. Anyway, I got rid of it, so I don't have it anymore because it was like a big nope for me. But I really didn't like the story. I hated the characters. It was on the back, it was like billed as like a feminist Lord of the Flies, which Lord of the Flies is one of my favorite books that I was ever forced to read in school. And I'm cool with feminism and stuff, but the only thing that I could tell that was feminist about this book, and this might be a tiny spoiler, was that this like virus or whatever that's affecting all the characters, the whole world, but specifically the characters on this island that are like trapped in the school, it kind of gives the girl, it kind of like evolves the females into like kind of powerful like creatures. Not all of them, some of them just die in horrific ways, but if you're a guy and you get it, it's like insta death, like you will die, there's no coming back from it. Not a single dude that gets this like virus survives from it. And that was the only thing that I could tell you that was like, had like a feminist bit to it, because they don't show strength in the girls' characters. There's not like a coming together. They all act very selfish, and they're always seeking like their own means to an end. And so it just, for them to be like billing it as like a feminist novel really rubbed me the wrong way. Yeah, very underwhelmed. And the ending, it just kind of like ends. Like I was like, I have so many questions still. Like there's no like conclusion. Like, wait, okay, what happens now? Like it was almost like it was a half written book. Like you had gotten halfway and you were just now getting to like the part where it's like, okay, now we take off, and it just stopped. And there's not a sequel, so like, not that I would read it if there was, but yeah. So that one was really rough. The cover, I'll put it up somewhere on the screen, was the reason I bought the book in the first place. I bought it from like Goodwill or something, so thank goodness. But the cover is so pretty. Like, I'm obsessed with the cover, and so I really was hoping that I would really like this book so I could keep the cover on my shelves, but no. So that was the worst one I read. The next one was Enchantment by Catherine May. I vaguely remember this book. It was basically like it was like some vignettes kind of like finding peace and happiness in like the small things of life and in nature. I read it for one of my book clubs, my Natural Litsy book club. And it kind of started off strong. Like the first two, she goes through like different, it's like earth, fire, wind, water, or something like that. And so the first two, which I don't remember which ones they were, they were fairly strong, and I feel like, okay, I think I'm getting something from this book a little bit. Not like whoa, this is so impactful, but I was like, okay, I can. And then the further it went, the more it just like fizzled out. And by the end, I was just like, you're really, really pulling at strings here to get this to be cohesive. So yeah, that's really all I can say about that one. I don't remember a lot of it, which is really bad for a book. So yeah, that was the one that I didn't. The next one, so those were the two books that I would say were like bad books that I read. Everything else is either like good or great or amazing. So the next one going upwards is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. It is my first Le Guin that I had ever read, and I actually really enjoyed it. There were parts where it was very kind of slow and dry and plotted a little bit, and so I think that's why I only gave it like a 4-star. But I don't remember what the other two I rated are. I could check on Goodreads, but I think they were like 2s at the highest, probably 1s, I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. Anything like a 3 or below, or a 2 or below, 1s or 2s, sorry. So this is my rating system. 1s or 2s, I just get rid of you. If I own the book, if I bought the book, I just get rid of it. I don't keep it around the house. 3s are like a vague area where like sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I'll set you on the shelf for a little bit, and I'll come back in like a year or so. And if I still feel like I want to keep you and possibly reread you, you get to stay. If not, you get booted out. And then 4s and 5s I keep. And 4s are like really, really good books that I really enjoyed, but might not necessarily like sing its praises to everyone that will listen. And then 5-star books are like books that I want like everyone to read, or I got so much enjoyment out of them that I couldn't possibly imagine not having them on my shelves. So that's kind of a quick rundown of how I rate my books. So The Dispossessed was a library book, so I don't own it, but if I had bought it, I would keep it because it got 4 stars. I really, really liked the main character, and in parts, there were like a few parts where I was like, like there's kind of a moment, again, kind of spoilers, where he's borderline rapey, I guess, in a scene, and I was like, well, I did not like that. That was really bad. And I don't really know why Le Guin decided to add that bit, but it's okay. But I thought it was a really interesting look on what would make a society a utopia and what would make a society feel oppressive. And neither of the two societies really are perfect, and neither of them are like the worst you could ever get. Two of the characters, the main protagonist has a conversation with a side character about how he views the place that they are as more of a hell than a utopia. And this other character is telling him, like, well, to me, this is utopia, and where I come from is hell. And so it's all about perspective. And I thought it was really interesting. It opens up like a lot of conversations about what each individual views as integral to their own happiness, and to whether they feel their life is fulfilling or whether they feel like they aren't being true to themselves, or that like life isn't going the way that they want. Yeah, it's a really, really good read. It made me definitely want to read more Le Guin. A lot of people have suggested a lot of her other books now that I've mentioned that I've read one and that I enjoyed it. So looking forward to diving more into her work. So the next one is, this is one of the first ones that I have like an actual copy of. So this is Animorphs. Any child of the 90s will know exactly what these are. I actually have the whole collection, and I've been attempting to go through. The plan originally was to read at least one a month, and I have totally fallen off that wagon. So we'll see. So the last one I read actually was all the way back in January, was this one. So I need to get back on the horse, but we'll see. So this is The Forgotten. It's number 11. Number 11? Number 11. And I don't know if a lot of you remember, let's see if I can get this in here, but there's like the inner flap has like the animal that the kid transforms into, and then at the bottom they have these little, I don't know how well I can do this for you guys, they have like these little like motion, like he slowly transforms, slowly animorphs into the animal. I don't know how well that picked up on camera. I don't have like a viewfinder thing. I just do this on my phone. So we'll see. We'll see if you could see anything or not. But I love this series. I loved it when I was a kid. I never was able to get them all or afford them all when I was a little kid. My parents didn't see the merit in buying all these different books. If you have 5 Animorph books, you have all of them. That was my parents' opinion on it. So, but I was lucky enough. One day I was helping a friend move, and he was boxing up old books, and he had the entire Animorph series, and he was like, hey, do you want these? And I was like, yeah, well, how much? And he's like, no, you can have them for free. I was like, yes, please. So I am very, very fortunate to have the entire series. Anyway, so this one is told from the perspective of Jake, and this is one where they kind of like go back in time, sort of. I'm trying to spoil things. Not that I think a lot of you are going to probably go out and pick this up, but it's a little bit different than some of the other stories in the series. I'm trying not to be too spoily, but also trying not to be too vague, or else like then I'm not describing anything. It's my first review on YouTube, guys. Be gentle. So he has to kind of come to terms with his role as the leader. They kind of all just kind of like just decided, like there wasn't a vote or anything like that. Like they just like from the get-go like looked to Jake as being the leader. And sometimes he really struggles with that role. Other times he shines, but he always definitely takes it on his shoulders, and he understands his role in the group and how integral it is. And I did really enjoy in this book that he mentions, like Jake mentions, whether Axe, which is the Andalite character, is trying to be funny or not. He's like, I don't think he has a sense of humor. And I'm like, Jake, Axe is hilarious. Axe has a very like dry like sense of humor, but he definitely has a sense of humor. But Marco is always like the one that's like, you know, supposedly the funny one. So for anyone that doesn't know about the book series, which you probably don't care at that point, there are a bunch of kids that Earth is under invasion by these enemy aliens, and an alien that is on the side of humans gives them the power to morph, so they can touch any animal and then absorb that animal's DNA and kind of like can make it a part of theirs. And so then from then on they can transform into that animal, and then that's how they fight the Yerks, which are like these like slugs that like crawl into your ear and then like control your brain. And so any person that's kind of taken over by these parasites are called controllers. And so those are like the human enemies, human sort of enemies of the Animorphs. So, and then Axe is an Andalite, which his race is the one, his brother actually is the one that gives the group the power to morph. So yeah, it's an amazing series. It is like a middle grade, like kids series, but it deals with some heavy stuff. There's like life-threatening situations, death, like knowing who to trust, growing up, you know, throughout rough times. Anyway, being a teenager is very hard anyway. Being a teenager that is scared that every person is possibly a controller, having family that is controllers. I mean, it's I don't know, it's really, really good. So anyway, so next one after that was Hound of the Baskervilles, which I have a copy, I just can't find it. So that's the one that I can't locate right now. But it's by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It was my first Sherlock Holmes book that I've ever read that wasn't the Great Illustrated series of like my childhood, which they like kind of abridge everything and like cut out like chunks of it and stuff. So I had like a collection of those, of Sherlock Holmes stories of that when I was a kid, and I read those. So this was my first time reading like an actual full novel of Sherlock Holmes, and I loved it. This one got 5 stars. Oh, sorry, Animorphs got 5 stars as well. But Hound of the Baskervilles got 5 stars. It was so good, so good. There was like this kind of supernatural element to it, because you don't know, like, is the Hound real? Is it a figment of everyone's imagination? Is it a ghost? Is it a supernatural monster of some sort? Which all of the Sherlock Holmes novels, as far as I understand it, are set in like the real world, so there isn't any like supernatural, and I knew that going into it. But even then, reading it, I was like, is this gonna turn out to be something supernatural? Like, is the Hound real? Is the Hound something weird? Like, but really well done. There were parts where I was like, oh, I've got this figured out, and I would have like pieces of things figured out, but then like the bigger picture I didn't have figured out. And even those little pieces, I would think like, okay, this piece is going to fit in like this, and then it would fit in like this instead. So I was right about the piece, but it fit in differently, if that makes sense. Again, trying not to be too specific, although this book has been around for a while, so if you're coming here for spoiler free, I mean, you know, I try. So yeah, so that one was a really good one. Again, I'm definitely going to read more Sherlock Holmes, because that one was really good. So my final book, so it's 6 books in January. It was a really good reading month for me. I sort of cheated, because the next one that I'm about to talk about, I started in December of the previous year, and then it carried over, but still. So It by Stephen King was my #1 read for all of January. I'm a big Stephen King fan, so I'm kind of biased, but this book was so good. I really love how Stephen King can take things from my childhood, or even things that I never thought were scary as a child, but can write about them, like fire hoses, can write about them, and I'm like, I'm terrified of, like, in this moment as I'm reading, I'm terrified of fire hoses. Like, yeah, it's, I don't know. I really loved how Pennywise wasn't the only scary thing about the book. Pennywise is terrifying, sort of. I do love clowns, as you can see. I am a big Pennywise fan. And Bill Skarsgård is Pennywise, and Tim Curry is Pennywise. Anyone that's ever played Pennywise, I would give a chance. So, I distracted myself now, thinking of my 2 Pennywise crushes. Okay. But Pennywise, as what he is really scary. And then, but what's scarier to me was the town of Derry, and how intertwined Pennywise and the town of Derry really were, and how our comfort with horrific things that go on in our lives just kind of like give a breeding ground for more horrible things, or like people turn a blind eye to. So like school shooting, I live in America, school shootings are like prevalent, and you hear about them like all the time. That's something that shouldn't be happening, and you can picture it happening in a town like Derry, and people just being like, it's just another school shooting. And that's how it seems like it's in America. Like, I mean, you know, we're freaking out about it, but the powers to be that have anything to be able to stop it are just like, yeah, that sucks. Maybe we should give teachers guns. So, I don't know. Like, anyway, that's a political conversation that we won't be having right now. So, the power of imagination and friendship that saves these people, not just as kids, but also once they're adults, that was really powerful too, because I'm not like a believer in a lot of like spiritual stuff, or, you know, speak it into being and make it so, but I do believe that your thoughts and how you choose to view your reality do have a big impact on what that reality is. And that was kind of like a big focus in this book. And like the power of your imagination when you're a kid is incredible. I mean, it's what kind of gets you through life, because you don't really know what anything is like. The best you can do is go off of like past experiences and kind of your imagination. And I thought that was really, really cool. Like I said, Stephen King always has this way of like writing about childhood that makes me feel like he really gets it. Like, I've read other books by plenty of other people that write about kids or childhood, and you're like, well, you're just an adult writing about what you think little kids are going through, and you've kind of forgotten what it's like to be a kid. And I don't think Stephen King has ever forgotten what it's like to be a kid. And that really, really comes across, especially in books like this, where the cast is predominantly, for a giant chunk of the book, just some kids. There is the problematic scene, if you know, you know, which I was ready for, because people had described it to me and described it in kind of like a graphic way, to where I thought what I was going to get was this very like creepily erotic kind of like, oh, that's concerning, King, you know. But for me, and again, this could be because I'm biased for Stephen King, because I will totally take that criticism. I'm sure I have blinders on. I've liked almost every single book I've ever read by him. The only one that I didn't like was From a Buick 8. I think that's what it's called. I hated that book. But anyway, I digress. So I can understand how people get really queasy during that specific scene and don't think that it should have ever been included. But for me, I was not nearly as bothered by it as I expected to be, because like I said, I I hadn't read the book, and they don't put this scene in the movies for obvious reasons, thank goodness. But I kind of had like an idea of like what to expect, and it wasn't as bad as I was led to believe. Again, maybe if I had written the book, I would not have chosen to go this way, but a lot of people talk about how it's unneeded, and as someone who, like Bev, went through some form of abuse as a kid, as a young woman, watching her decide to take power over her body and make the decision to be the hero in that moment, that was what I got out of reading it. To me, it was kind of a, even though it's in the sewer, which that was, to me, that was the worst part, is that they were in the sewer doing this, and I was just like thinking of awful things of what they had crawled through in the water and everything. But anyway, it was actually a kind of beautiful, intimate moment between this group of human beings. Again, I know the age is very questionable. Again, you kind of have to look sideways at King, and I get that. But as someone speaking from abuse, it wasn't triggering, and I viewed it in a more positive light than I think a lot of other people do. That doesn't mean that everyone will view it that way, and not everyone should view it that way. I totally understand the criticisms for it, but if you've heard about that and that's what's keeping you from reading the book, I would encourage you to still give it a chance, because I don't think that a couple of pages out of a 1,000-page book is really enough of, a deterrent to just go ahead and still enjoy a really, really good book. Yeah, so that's it. That's my January wrap-up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I am planning on doing more of the next months to kind of catch up with myself, like all the books and everything that I've read over the past year. So I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I tried to keep it as succinct as possible. But again, this is my first time reviewing to a camera, in front of the camera, because before it was just my voice and I was able to kind of ramble on, because I knew I could do a lot of edits and stuff, and I'm trying to edit these videos the least amount as possible. I kind of like the way that some of the other booktubers do it, where it's not such a polished product at the end, and it's more just like a chat between friends. So that's what I'm attempting for. So yeah, what was your favorite read, if you can remember it, in the month of January? Again, I know it's May already, so or what was your worst? Do you have one that you want to rant about? Do you have ones that you can suggest to me to read? I'm here for the conversation. So okay, well, thank you guys for watching. Have a one. Have a good one. Bye.